It was a crisp morning in the small town of Maplewood when the unimaginable happened. A young boy cycling down a quiet road screamed in horror at the sight of a German shepherd, lifeless and bound to a utility pole with nothing but silver duct tape. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden glow over the sleepy streets of Maplewood. But for young Lucas, his quiet ride that morning would be forever etched in his memory. As he pedaled past the old barn on the outskirts of town, something stopped him dead in his tracks. The sight before him was enough to freeze the blood in his veins. There, clinging desperately to a rusty utility pole, was a German shepherd, his fur matted with dirt and tears, his body stiff and broken from the brutal treatment. The silver duct tape wrapped around him was so tight it seemed to merge with his skin. Lucas could barely breathe as he rushed to the dog's side. The animal's eyes, though dull, flickered with the smallest glimmer of life. It was clear that the poor creature had been there for days, abandoned with no food, no water, and no help. The cyclist's scream pierced the air, calling for help. Within minutes, animal control officers, the police, and townsfolk gathered around, all equally horrified by the cruelty they were witnessing. They couldn't understand how anyone could do this to such a beautiful, loyal animal. The dog's condition, frail and weakened, was a testament to the cruelty he'd endured. When the authorities carefully cut the tape and freed the dog, it was a race against time. His deep gashes from the tape and severe dehydration were immediately noticeable. But despite everything, there was one thing that stood out the most. The dog's eyes. They were filled with fear, but also trust. He believed someone would help him, even after such betrayal. 9-year-old Sophie Daniels was the first to learn about the dog's rescue. She wasn't just another child with an ordinary sense of compassion. Sophie's ability to connect with animals was uncanny. Her parents often joked that animals seemed to understand her better than people did. Growing up on a small farm, Sophie had spent most of her childhood caring for injured birds, nursing sick animals, and helping her parents tend to the livestock. She had seen her fair share of hardship in the animal world, but nothing could prepare her for the heart-wrenching story of the dog. The news spread fast. A local animal shelter posted a heartbreaking photo of the German shepherd, still recovering from his ordeal. Sophie didn't have to think twice. She knew she had to help. Her parents supported her decision, but the shelter hesitated. The dog, whom they named Chance, had been through so much. He had been aggressive toward everyone, even the vets. His wounds were severe and his trauma was evident. He needed time to heal physically before anyone could get close. But Sophie wasn't deterred. She was determined. Armed with a bag of treats, her favorite storybook, and a heart full of compassion, Sophie arrived at the shelter. The staff didn't know what to expect, but they allowed her to try. They set up a safe distance between her and Chance's kennel, understanding that even the smallest gesture of kindness could make a difference. Sophie sat quietly outside the kennel, softly reading her book aloud. She didn't make any attempt to reach for Chance. Not yet. Instead, she let her voice fill the room with calm. The quiet hum of the shelter seemed to settle around them both. At first, Chance was distant. He had been betrayed by humans before. He wasn't sure if he could trust again. But over the next few days, something began to change. Slowly, he approached the bars of his kennel and, for the first time, met Sophie's eyes. And in that moment, there was something there, a flicker of hope. Days turned into weeks. Sophie kept coming, each time with new stories, treats, and toys. At first, Chance would retreat to the furthest corner of the kennel, his eyes wide with suspicion. But Sophie never gave up. She kept her distance, yet always remained nearby, speaking softly to him, reading her book aloud, or simply sitting in silence. It wasn't long before Sophie's patience paid off. One afternoon, as Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor, Chance slowly walked toward her, his paw lifting slightly off the ground as if testing the waters. Sophie extended her hand, not to pet him but to show him she wasn't a threat. Chance stood still for a moment, as if weighing his options. Finally, with a soft exhale, he stepped closer and nudged her hand gently. The bond was forming. Over the next few weeks, Sophie introduced Chance to simple commands: sit, stay, come here, using treats and positive reinforcement. It wasn't just a physical healing Chance needed. It was the emotional recovery that would take time. and Sophie had an unwavering belief that she was the one to help him. As Chance's trust grew, so did his strength. He started to play again, running around the shelter yard with newfound energy. And as the days turned into months, Chance's transformation became more and more apparent. He wasn't just healing physically, he was healing emotionally. Sophie's bond with Chance didn't just change the dog, it changed the entire town of Maplewood. Word of their heartwarming connection spread through social media. The story of the abandoned dog and the little girl who refused to give up on him touched something deep in the community's heart. People began to donate food, toys, and blankets to the shelter. Businesses held fundraisers to support the cause. Even local schools created fundraising drives and spread awareness about animal cruelty. The town, once known for quiet streets and small-town charm, was suddenly alive with compassion and action. They had learned from Sophie's example, and they weren't about to sit by any longer. The shelter saw an increase in volunteers. More families began adopting animals. Local farmers, who had once been skeptical of pets in the house, started adopting strays. But it wasn't just the adults. The children were the ones who truly took the initiative. They followed Sophie's lead, organizing their own volunteer groups, creating safe spaces for abandoned animals, and helping at the shelter. Inspired by Sophie's story, the local government even introduced stricter animal welfare laws. The town passed legislation that made it mandatory for schools to include humane education in their curriculum, ensuring that the next generation would grow up with a deep sense of responsibility toward animals. Months passed, and Chance was finally ready for adoption, but there was no one else for him but Sophie. Her parents saw how strong their bond had become, and they knew that Chance had found a forever home. On the day Sophie officially adopted Chance, the entire town came out to celebrate. The shelter organized a grand event, complete with food trucks, games, and booths educating the public about animal rights. Sophie stood beside Chance, his leash in her hands, her eyes full of emotion as she looked down at the dog who had taught her so much. The bond between them was undeniable. It wasn't just the dog who had healed, it was the entire town. Through Chance, Maplewood discovered the power of love, compassion, and second chances. And Sophie? She had found her true calling. Sophie and Chance's story didn't end there. They traveled to schools, spreading the message of empathy and kindness. They met with children, showing them that even the most broken of beings can heal if given the chance. Chance became Maplewood's mascot for compassion, reminding everyone that even the deepest scars can heal when treated with love and patience. As for Sophie, she remained the heart of the community. Her unwavering belief in second chances had left a lasting impact on everyone.